Back to LGBT plus live.
Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm from Youth Work Ireland, Cavan Monaghan.
Hi, my name's Neve. I used to be a part of the LGBT group and now I'm a volunteer.
And I'm Barry. I'm the LGBT youth development worker for Cavan and Monaghan.
Okay, so we have a couple of questions in, and I suppose the first one I'll tell you is from a parent, and the question is, can you explain pronouns and why are they so important? So it's a nice and clean question. What are pronouns and what are they about? So Neve, do you want
yes,
to start?
Of course. Well, I think it's all about identification. It's like some people identify as she, her, some people identify as he, him. And it's an important way to express yourself, because only when other people understand your pronouns, then you can actually be who you want to be and who you are.
Yeah, the pronouns are very important, and it comes down to a person's identity as well. So it's kind of like, for myself, if I was in a group session or in a group meeting with other professionals, I would introduce myself, Barry McSkeen, pronouns he, him, and that just essentially lets the room know that that's the pronouns that I'm going by. And out of respect, people will try their best to ensure that they use the correct pronouns. It comes down to a person's identity, and with this, we're kind of looking at people who fall under the gender or under the transgender umbrella. So that could be non-binary people, people who are gender fluid, people who are intersex, or people who would identify as being the opposite gender that they were assigned at birth. So it's ultimately it's about respecting people's gender. Like there's various different invented pronouns. To be honest, with pronouns as well, sometimes it's best to avoid using the pronouns if you're not sure. Use the person's name, because that way you're less likely to cause offense if you're not sure of somebody's pronoun. Now, in the cis world, this isn't an issue. And when I say cis, I mean cisgender, which basically refers to people who identify as they were born. So I would identify as a cis male. I was born and assigned male at birth, and I identify as male. And in the cis world, pronouns aren't necessarily an issue, but it is something that we do need to keep in mind whenever we're, especially within the LGBT community. Pronouns are very important.
Yeah, and ultimately, surely it comes down to just personal choice and respecting that person's individual choice and their right to be an individual and to be themselves.
Exactly. And I think that just falls, again, it's another repetitive topic. It's about respect. It's about respecting people and respecting who they identify as, and their sexuality and their gender identity and all of the things within the LGBT community. Just allowing people to be themselves and staying away from the heteronormative sort of situation that we often find ourselves in.
Well, Barry, am I wrong in thinking that like we get fixated on respecting sexuality and respecting all these kinds of things? It's bigger than that. It's about just respecting individuality. It's all those different life choices that all of us make day in, day out. Like that's your individuality. That's who you are. You know, and ultimately, if we take the sex out of it completely, then it's just about who we are as individuals, and it's, you know, it's much broader than, and probably less scary than people tend to think about, because we do fixate on that sexuality element.
Yeah, and just to put, I'm not pulling you on it, but just the life choices, like your gender identity and your sexuality isn't a life choice. What you are choosing to do is to let the world know who you are, and when you use life choices, and I know that's what you meant. But just to clarify, because some people might fixate on the term life choices, because it's not a choice. Being a member of the LGBT community is not a choice. Being gay, bi, trans, lesbian is not a choice. It's something that you are born, it is who you are, and the choice bit is letting the world know who you are and being, as you say, that individual. Yes.
Yeah, sorry. No, you're absolutely right. I suppose I'm thinking in even that broader context, but when you say it like that, it even hammers it home more that it's not even a choice. It's just who we are as individuals. It's all those things. So, you know, it's so broad. And I think
And it is.
I think you're right. I think there's a perception that it is a life choice. And certainly, like, I'm not referring to sexuality or anything like that when I say it. I was thinking of, you know, other, you know, that broader sort of life spectrum.
Oh yeah.
But
no, I know you weren't referring to that.
It's good. At least we're not live or anything.
We're global. Like, they're watching us in Azerbaijan right now. I don't know why I always pick Azerbaijan. That's my favorite country. Stop.
I just wonder what. I just wonder what advice, Niamh, would you give to parents or teachers around the pronouns thing, of what should they, if they're unsure and they're with young people and that they know it might be you know, something for them, what way should parents, or should they ask, I suppose, is what I'm asking.
Well, I suppose the easiest way, if you're a teacher, instead of either just say their names, which could always be the easiest, but then some people obviously don't want, if they're closeted and they have a different name, that's a bit of a problem. But if you just go around, like we did them loads of times in the youth group, where you just sit down and you go, it's like a little get to know me game. It's like, look, my name's Niamh, my pronouns are she, him, you know, and then move on and then put another question in there of like something else, like, what's your favorite color? Tell me something about yourself. Like the Smarty game we played. It's a hard question to ask as such, because you don't want to offend anyone, but most people are okay with it. It's they respect the fact that you do want to know and that you will call them by their pronoun.
Yeah, and it is, using the name is always the best. I tend to, when I'm speaking to or about young people as well, I tend to use the gender neutral they, them, because that way, and if you're using them in the singular, then you're not causing offense. There is the invented pronouns as well, but to be honest, the easiest and most straightforward way to know what to call somebody is to ask them. Because if somebody comes out as being trans, as being non-binary, as being, or they tell you that they're intersex or whatever, find out what that means to them and ask them how they want to be addressed. And that's probably the best way. I am one of the world's worst, though, for messing up. And the other thing is, everybody makes mistakes. So if you make a mistake, just let the young person know that it wasn't intentional, that it came out by mistake, and that you didn't intend to offend. And the majority of young people, when you apologize for a genuine mistake, they will acknowledge it and they will understand. So just be upfront. We're human, we make mistakes. And one thing that I think for teachers, they will find it difficult too, because if you are introduced to somebody as a particular gender, then that's how it becomes difficult. It's the same for parents, it's the same for family members. It is an extremely difficult thing to get used to, regendering somebody as being the opposite or gender neutral. So just be honest, and if you make a mistake, apologize. That's the best thing I think that anybody can do.
And the young people know you're being genuine. You know, if you apologize and you say, look, I'm really sorry, and they understand, they get it. But it's so when they feel like they're being kind of, you know, being mislabeled on purpose or something like that, that can obviously be very annoying and distressing for them. But
and there's many instances.
Yeah, myself as well, that I might have known somebody by one gender first and then by a different gender, and I've made those mistakes, but the young people have been totally understandable when they can see in your eyes that you really didn't mean to do it, and you apologize and you try your best, you know.
And I think there's something probably in that, we tend to forget that LGBT young people have grown up in this heteronormative world, while certainly they don't forget. And, you know, there is an understanding of some of these sort of ingrained, unconscious biases that we carry. And I think we tend to forget some of that as well. And we get so panicked about it. And it is, as Barry says, like we've talked about it so many times, about, you know, asking people, finding out what different things mean to them. It's all about individuality.
Definitely.
Okay. Will we move on to the next question?
Yes, please.
So there's just, it's actually one in about a transgender male. So this young person says, I'm a transgender male and I haven't been to the doctor in a few years, and I don't want to go to my family doctor because I don't think he will understand. And I dread even trying to explain my situation. And then I also worry about having to be physically examined. So this is just a kind of a statement in to kind of say they're in this kind of situation where they feel they can't visit the doctor. And
Yeah, this is very common, especially for young trans people. Basically, one of the biggest problems is that young people under the age of 18, they're assigned a GP by their family, and therefore they don't have the control over who their doctor is. Like, it needs to be, they need parental consent to have that. Young people over 16 can see a GP without a family member present, but not everything discussed with the GP is confidential either. So if you're being referred for further treatment or anything, again, parental consent is needed. And I have come across a number of cases, actually very, very recently as well, of young people who are in that situation. The problem is the GP knows the family forever, and the young people are afraid of what may be said. They might not have come out at home, or if they have come out at home as being trans, it may not have been received well. And that's where the problems lie. The danger to it all is, though, that often young people then start looking for help elsewhere. And that's where it actually becomes extremely dangerous for young people. So the only bit of advice I can give, I know it is extremely difficult to come out to your GP and to have these conversations, but that is your medical professional, and they are professionals, and they will treat you and whatever you advise them of with confidence, within reason. The most important thing for any professional is your safety, and the only time that they'll discuss something outside is if they're concerned for your safety. So go to them. They're professionals. Have a conversation. You don't need to act. You don't need to look for any treatment, but have a conversation and see what your GP can do for you.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as I turned 18, I changed my GP. It was something about like control over my life that I could have, and I knew I could talk to this new GP because there would be nothing going back said to my family. But it's still, I think it's the body dysphoria, which is the most frightening part of going to a GP, because you're always worried. You just, when you're transgender, it's even worse because it's harder to explain, less people understand the concept behind it. And when you're not born in the body that you think you should be born in, I can imagine it's an awful torment to be able to go and do that. And my advice is, if you can change your doctor and go and just try and pluck up a little bit of courage just to talk to someone and see if you can get it through.
Yeah, the thing with transgender as well, there's so many different levels. There's such a massive scale to what it is to come out as transgender, to move on to maybe changing your name, socially transitioning, maybe medically transitioning, surgically transitioning, depending on, not every transgender person necessarily goes from being, say, it was a trans female, from being male to just wanting to shoot the whole way through. Some people never go through any medical or surgical interventions, but that doesn't take away from the fact that they identify as being trans. The dangerous thing, however, is if people aren't getting the proper help, and the help is there through your GP. It's there through your GP. In Ireland, it's by referrals through CAMS, which is the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service, and if you're over 18, through the Adult Mental Health Services. But I do know of instances where young people are actually going online and seeking hormones and different things like that there, and starting to self-medicate. Now, I can't stress how dangerous that is for a young person. It is probably one of the worst things you could do, because in order to be, if you are going for a medical transition, one of the most important things is that the doctors actually monitor not just your physical health, but your mental and emotional health too. They need to make sure that you're strong enough, because essentially if you're changing from one gender to another, you're putting your body through puberty again, only with a different hormone makeup. So you need to be emotionally and mentally extremely strong to go through something like that. It's not something to be taken lightly. Also, the stuff you get online, God knows what you're getting. So the dangers that lie there. Doctors also monitor your hormone levels. They administer the correct dosage depending on your hormone levels. All of these things. And I know I'm jumping into medical transitions here, but it's really important that young people realize that the doctor is your way forward. They're the person that will make sure that your body and your mind are fit for whatever transitions or whatever, whether it's only social transition, whether it's medically or surgically. They're the people that will determine what's best for you. And the first step is your GP.
Absolutely.
Now, that's not taken away from the young person's initial statement as well. I totally understand that it's extremely difficult for them. Again, I actually contacted a GP for a young person recently just to have a hypothetical to try and find out more information for that young person. So depending on the young person's age and the relationship with the GP, etc., there is ways we can have conversations, and maybe just give me a shout, drop me an email. We'll have a conversation about what your options are, and we can look at the practicalities of making sure that you're looked after. But don't avoid going to the doctor. It's one of the worst things you could do. If there's something not right for you, make sure you get seen to.
And even Barry, it might be in relation to something else completely different, just to do with their health. Yeah. And I know I've had experience with other young people as well, just not accessing their doctor because they're transgender. And it might just be something in general, like they're sick and they won't actually go to the doctor because they don't want to start having that conversation. So, and it's neglecting their health, which is very, worrying. So it's really trying to encourage young people to try and think of some way, or maybe somebody could come with them as a support. And I know one young person, I'm not saying this is going to work for everybody, but I know one young person did write their GP a letter, and they posted the letter to them and said, this is who I am, and when I come in, I don't want to have a big long conversation about being transgender and all that, but I just want to let you know, and all of that kind of stuff. And the GP actually rang the young person back then, and they arranged to have the appointment. So that was a very positive experience that happened there. But it was even thinking a little bit outside the box, that the young person had the kind of ingenuity to say, maybe I'll write them a letter and kind of get my bit in before I even have to face anybody. Yeah. So it was just something like an idea that they had of their way of contacting the doctor. But it could be like that, maybe getting a family member to act on their behalf to kind of get that bit out of the conversation if that's what's worrying them before they get in the door to the doctor.
It's a very good idea. And one of the upsides to COVID-19 at the moment is GPs are doing phone referrals, because obviously with the whole physical distancing, they're not having clients in their surgeries. So at the moment, if you're looking for any sort of medical support, just ring your doctor, because you won't have to have a physical examination. They'll have a consultation with you over the phone, and your identity or your trans identity won't necessarily be an issue. But it also, having that distance, not being in the same room as the person, you might actually have the courage to say it over the phone, where you might not be able to do so in person. So maybe take advantage. If you're looking for help, take advantage of it now and call out during. It's probably the only thing we can be thankful of COVID-19 for, is giving young people that opportunity.
I think just something that was touched on cannot be overstated, which is the importance of services like Barry's, Cavan Monaghan Rainbow Youth, ourselves in Youth Work Ireland, Cavan Monaghan, all of those support services out there, the national networks for LGBT young people, as a support for that initial step, for that initial stage. So, that's sort of our bread and butter, guys, I suppose, in terms of supporting young people, whatever the issue is, and signposting them into the right services. So, that's, Barry, you mentioned it. It is really, really important. Yeah, and it's interesting that you've decided to be on mute right after pulling
Of
me up.
course, I am just, it's the only time I've muted the entire time. And the reason I didn't mute is because I didn't want to be the numpty talking while muted. But there you go. Sorry, there is other places to look for advice. Like if you don't want to come through our services as well, you can also go through Belong To, which is the National Advocacy for Young LGBT People in the country. And they have a page at the moment that is dedicated. I'm just going to flash it up there for a wee moment. It is dedicated to COVID-19 and how to actually get supports if you identify as trans at the moment as well. So there's different stuff around hormone replacement therapy, binding and things like that there. But the most important bit is the support, because there are youth workers across the country supporting young LGBT people. You also have the LGBT helpline, so there's the times for that. But go to the Belong To website and just click in on the trans healthcare, and that'll give you more information on other options if you're a bit nervous about coming through our services as well. You have TENI as well, which is the Trans Equality Network of Ireland, and their website has different information around supports that are available as well, health and wellbeing around trans identity. So that's it. I'll stop sharing that. Somebody talk.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, so I don't know how much time we've left, Kellan, but I'm going to mention that it's the 5th anniversary of the marriage referendum over the weekend. And we were just talking ourselves about, is everything, in terms of rights and everything accessible to LGBT people in Ireland now, or is there still some discrimination that still exists in Ireland? We're just wondering what your thoughts on that are.
I'll go first because I love talking. It's something I just love doing. Yes, it's a much better place to live because we talked about this here a few weeks ago. By popular vote, the public said, yes, you are equal in our country and you can come and get married and do all the things that straight people have to go through as well, such as marriage and all that trauma. Sorry, straight people, I don't know. No, so it's great in that regard, but there's still homophobia. Homophobia still exists, transphobia still exists, biphobia still exists. There's young people who identify as trans in the education system who aren't necessarily getting supported, having to use toilets that aren't fitting to their gender, and different regulations like that are still in place. So it's not all roses, and I think a lot of Irish society, well, maybe a lot of the tolerating Irish society, the people who would have voted for the marriage referendum are all going, yes, great, we're in a fabulous, and we are in a fabulous little country, but there's still a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of people need support. I even was speaking with a young person who I've known for a number of years, they shall remain nameless, over the weekend, and they came out years ago and they are struggling. They are struggling because there is still homophobia. There's homophobia in our schools, in our youth clubs, and as youth workers, we try our best not to have it, but it does exist. And unfortunately, now people are facing homophobia in the home. They can't get away from it under the pandemic at the moment. So yeah, there's a lot to be done. Stop talking, Barry. Neve, talk.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. There's a lot of it still out there. Like what you come across even every day on the street, like there's homophobia everywhere, and it's still worrying that it's still there, but it is getting better. There is more services available for LGBTQ plus people, and it's just I've lost my point altogether. It's
people
just
get beat up walking down the street.
Yeah,
that still happens. Just because they hold the hand of the person they love, they get beat up walking down the street, and that is still happening. And people think that that's acceptable. And while that's happening, then we still have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, exactly. We do, and hopefully we'll get through it.
We will. And I suppose one thing that I'm actually working at the moment with some of the members of Cavan and Rainbow Youth, from the Cavan Youth Club is actually, since we're not having a Pride, I'm pushing it out to our local representatives, to our local authorities, to our ETBs, and to any other public building. Now, when I say I'm pushing it out, people expect lots of letters and lots of emails, because they're coming. We're not going to have a Pride this year. Our young people can't travel to Dublin. So I'd love to see the likes of our courthouses, libraries, all these public buildings flying the Pride flag for the week of that would have been Pride Week. Because that in itself is making it public that we are an accepting nation, that our young people and our LGBT people of all ages have a place in our society, and that every part of the country should be represented. So I'm pushing it out there for people, especially in Cavan Monaghan region, our local councillors, our local TDs, to push that for us. That is something that we should have. And the more people that push that out there, then the less acceptable, the less people will even think that it's acceptable to be homophobic, transphobic, or biphobic.
And I think it's even as well, thinking of the youth centre, it's kind of challenging the language that's used or the sayings that are said. And I know you have to feel comfortable and able to do it, but if you do, you know, if somebody says something that's homophobic, sometimes they're just saying it and they actually, there's no thought being put into them saying it because they've just heard it somewhere else, or they just think that's the thing to say. So like in the youth centre, they might say, oh, somebody's gay, or, you know, that's bent, or whatever it is. And if you actually say to them, why are you after saying that? They actually get quite a shock, you know, that somebody's challenging them on it. And there's also the fact that they mightn't have actually put that much thought into what they're saying. And then if you kind of have a follow-up conversation with them about, you know, why are they saying that? You know, what does it mean? Or what do you think it means for other people to hear that? It just gives them food for thought. And it's, if you're able to, and you feel strong enough to challenge people, you know, you should try and do it, because there's homophobia just ingrained in there that young people, or just, sorry, not just young people, any people just don't realize that they're even saying it, or that they're engaging in it. And when you bring it to their attention, it makes them think about doing it again.
Yeah, and to be honest, I probably would have come across as one of the most homophobic gay people you'll ever meet in the past, and I used to use that language and not thinking about it. Yeah, sorry, I had to check and make sure it wasn't muted because people were smiling. I was like, he's doing it again. But I used to actually, I'd go, oh, that's gay. And there was a friend of mine a number of years back challenged me on it. And I was like, but I'm allowed to use that language. And she said, no, if you expect other people to use the language correctly and not use it in an offensive manner, stop doing it as well. Lead by example. And that's the most important thing. Yes, lead by example. If you hear it, pull people up on it. Because people, as you said, Melissa, they don't realize how offensive it is. They don't realize that there may be a young person in their company who's struggling with their sexuality, and you're going, that's gay, in a negative way. And that's going to impact that young person's mental health more than you could imagine. So yes, definitely challenge it at all times.
But I think you're right. Like it rolls off the tongue all too easily. And I think one of the best things that ever happened to me was when I was about 17, 18, I had a mentor in youth work who pulled me on it every time. He'd lost his voice by the end of the first week, like, because it does, and we grow up here, and it does sort of roll off the tongue. You think nothing of it. You know, certainly I would have grown up thinking, well, I'm not hurting anyone by using it, but you really do have that potential.
But that's the thing about minorities. It's very easy to pick on a minority. It's very easy to follow the sheep and just be the normal person and be the heteronormative. It's very simple to do that there. It's strong. It takes a lot of courage to stand up and actually stand up for the little person, stand up for the minorities, stand up for those who don't have the courage to do it themselves yet. So that's how you can lead. Become a leader. Stop being sheep.
What a note to leave it on.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, we are still live, but we're going to stop being live now in a moment. Barry, maybe mute your mic again. No. But guys, that really is all we've got time for. Con's back on Wednesday with the parents' chats. Melissa, we're back Friday with the week in review, Friday live panel. And guys, we are back on we are back on Monday at 5:30. And before we go, Barry's going to sing us out with a song about his new book.
Yes, called Baba Black Sheep. No, these books. Oh, my green screen is messing with me here. Individuality belong to publish these leaflets, and I have some copies of them in my office. If anybody wishes, I can send them out. Don't be afraid to drop me a message through Facebook, email, or whatever. There's still the coming out guides as well. There is one looking after your mental health as an LGBT person. And I also have one survival guide to life. This is a spun out one, so I have a number of them in the office as well. But just reach out if you need any information, if you need any help, give us a shout. All of us have all these books in our houses or in our offices, so we can get them out to you should you need them. Take care.
And yeah, absolutely. Reach out. And the same, if you've got questions between now and next week, send them in to Cavan Monaghan Rainbow Youth or Youth for Ireland Cavan Monaghan, any social media page, or email any member of staff. And we'll chat about them next week. Guys, thanks very much, and I'll see you next week.